everybody to a virtual meeting amplifier. Virtual meeting amplifier. Yeah, it is Monday night. Yeah, well done, Andre. And we have the Bandcamp that's here to work with us. So we'll introduce Bandcamp and tell us all about the things and questions we have about Bandcamp. Welcome, Ali, to amplify her and tell us all about Bandcamp.
I will. Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me, and thank you all of you for being here on a Monday night. I'll try and be as kind of concise as I can. What I'll do is I'm going to run through. I've got a little deck here, which hopefully you can see, and it's split into kind of two sections. One is kind of some background information about Bandcamp, just with some facts and figures, a bit of our history, some of the features that we've got. And then the second half, the main bit of it, is kind of 5 tips of how to make the most out of being on Bandcamp. So hopefully there's a bit of context for you and then some good practical advice that you can take away. Obviously the session's being recorded, so you can check that again, but I've also got some resources and some links that I'll share before the end too. What I'll do is I'll leave time for questions at the end, if that's okay. I tend to find that quite often questions people have get answered in the next slide or something like that. So so if that's okay, I'll sort of zip through and then we'll leave some time for your questions at the end. Okay, so let's kick things off. So you should be able to see a slide saying, what is Bandcamp? Got a thumbs up? Yep, great. Actually, before we get started, and you can do, I don't know, maybe into the chat with this or something. How many of you have bought something on Bandcamp before? Just as a yes or no. See what we're dealing with. Yes, great. Oh, and Christina's found the little emoji reaction. Well done. I never know where that is. Okay, great. And yeah, how many of you have sold something? Oh, thanks, Joanna. That's great to hear. Right. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so we got a good few people who've used it, some who haven't. I like putting yet on there, Fran. That's good. It shows some intent for the future. I like it. Hopefully we'll get you there by the end of today. So right, let's get into it. So what is Bandcamp? Bandcamp's an online record store and music community where passionate fans discover, connect with, and directly support the artists that they love. I heard a really good description of Bandcamp from an old colleague of mine. I met with her for a drink, and she introduced me to her husband and her husband's friend. And the friend was like, Bandcamp, I don't know what that is. And she described it as like Etsy for music, which I think is a pretty good description of how it works. I think, you know, from where we've come, when we were a very, very DIY platform, as you'll see as we go through the presentation, we've built in a bunch of other features that allow larger artists and labels to use Bandcamp too, but we never kind of abandoned that DIY core. That's sort of really the majority of our users, and that's what kind of inspired us to start Bandcamp in the first place. Things are going pretty well. As of today, fans have paid artists, well, approaching $1.5 billion using Bandcamp. And just yesterday, we sold around 75,000 records on the site. What we're not a streaming service. There is streaming on Bandcamp, but we fundamentally don't really believe in the concept of renting music. For us, it's about purchasing. That's sort of more valuable for artists and more meaningful, I think, in some ways for fans too. We aren't a social media network, although, again, there are some ways that you can interact with other people on the site. And we're certainly not a Web3 platform. I think we really feel that most people probably haven't mastered Web 2 yet. So we'll wait on Web 3 before we've got those more basic things out of the way. How it works. So Bandcamp is an artist first platform. So what does that mean? What that means is that, as you can see from that pie chart, for us to make some money, the artist has to make a whole lot more money. We take a 15% cut of digital, 10% of physical. There's payment processing fees on top of that. We pay out within 24 to 48 hours. So the money's in your account very, very quickly. Funnily enough, when we started working with more record labels, one of the requests we had was, can you pay us less often, because it got a bit complicated for them dealing with so many payments. So we do actually have the option that you can get paid monthly if you prefer. That makes it easier for your accounting. And there's one deal for all. We don't play favorites. That deal, that 15 and 10%. So actually the 15% of digital drops to 10% when you hit $5,000 in sales. But everyone from a totally DIY artist to the biggest label that's using the site gets exactly the same deal. Yeah, I just realized, did I introduce myself at the beginning of this? I don't think I did I? No, how rude of me. Sorry. We had such a kind of like a casual start that I just sort of went straight into it. Sorry. So hello, everybody. My name is Ali Gilani. I'm the European artist and label rep at Bandcamp. I've worked at Bandcamp for 9 years now, and my job is to look after as many of the artists and labels in Europe that are using the site, to get more people using it, and then also to help the people that are using it make the most out of being on the platform. So I do, you know, a lot of working with artists and labels directly, a lot of going to conferences, doing workshops like this, and generally being the kind of contact point between Bandcamp and the music industry in Europe. Aside from Bandcamp, I have and do run my own record label, which I've been doing for 20 years now. I actually use Bandcamp before I worked there. So I get quite a nice perspective of seeing it as a user and seeing it as someone who's working at the company as well. Anyway, back to this. Enough about me. Right. So who uses Bandcamp? So it's a lot of different people using it. We've got cutting edge artists like the ones listed here, some of the sort of biggest indie artists in the world, some of the biggest innovative labels in the world as well. You know, from the 4ADs and Sub Pops to Ninja Tune and Warp and various others. But like I said, you know, the site works the same for everybody, and we're still very committed to our kind of DIY roots, and particularly trying to uplift and highlight emerging artists, as well as doing stuff for some of those bigger ones too. There's a lot going on the site at the moment. So in the last year, fans bought, well, over 14 million digital albums, just under 11 million tracks, 1.7 million vinyl records, 800,000 CDs, 350,000 cassettes. That's my favorite one. Big up all the cassette buyers out there. I'll get into cassettes and merch items a bit later on. And another kind of notable thing about us that I think a lot of people are familiar with Bandcamp for is Bandcamp Fridays. Fans have paid artists almost $140 million across the 43 Bandcamp Fridays that we've done. Bandcamp Fridays, for those not familiar, are days where we waive our revenue share. So instead of taking our 10 or 15%, all the money goes direct to the artist. We started these actually 5 years ago next month at the beginning of COVID, and we've been running them ever since. We actually had, well, it was meant to be a Bandcamp Friday last Friday, but we did a fundraiser. Instead of giving our share to the artists, we gave our share to Music Cares, which is a charity that supported, or has been supporting and is supporting artists who were affected by the California wildfires. We've done fundraisers in the past for the Transgender Law Center, for the ACLU, for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. So, you know, we kind of like to be able to help, use our platform to be able to help artists, but also other kind of other groups, I guess, that artists make part of. You know, if you're saying you're artist first, that means all artists, regardless of gender, orientation, or any other defining characteristic about them. And that's something that we believe in very, very dearly, and we'll do our best to uplift where we can. To give you a little idea about Bandcamp Fridays, so when we launched them back in March 2020, it was just as COVID was taking hold. There was a very uncertain future for a lot of artists. And, you know, myself being friends with a lot of artists, people were worried, how are we going to earn money? We've got this, no shows going on anymore, like what's going to happen? So we just decided that, yeah, okay, for one day we'll waive our fees and see what happens. And really for us, it's about highlighting the thing that we believe to be true every day, which is that as a fan, if you want the artists you love to be able to make the art that you love, you need to pay them. They can't exist on exposure or good wishes or likes on a social media platform. Artists need money. And with a lot of those other avenues closed at that point, we felt that we were in a good place to reaffirm that belief. And it went really well. On an average Friday pre-pandemic, we'd probably turn over around $300,000, maybe $500,000 if it was a very busy release week. The first Bandcamp Friday, we did $4.3 million. The second was 7.1. And they've continued to be between 2.5 and 4.5 ever since. We actually just announced our plans for the rest of this year. So we've got Bandcamp Fridays coming up in March. Wait, no, are we doing April? I can't remember. March, definitely May. March, April, May, August, September, October, December. I think that's right. But you'll see it on our website. There's a link to it. One of the things to note about Bandcamp Fridays, so funnily enough, actually, as an aside, when we launched them, we didn't call them Bandcamp Fridays. We called it Revenue Share Waiver Day, or like maybe it's even COVID-19 fundraiser day or something. It wasn't a very good name. And it was actually the community that that came up with Bandcamp Fridays, and we kind of ran with that as a name. One of the things that can become quite tricky for people on Bandcamp Fridays is there's so much music going up that you can get lost with all the stuff that's going on. Like, any of you who are users of Bandcamp, you get inundated with all the new release notifications, and sometimes your music can get lost in the sort of churn. We actually would recommend that you make sure that the first time you're communicating that you've got music out on that day isn't on the day. So you could choose to send a message using our community tab, which I'll show you later on, or highlight on your social media, or if you've got a mailing list, letting your fans know in advance that there's something coming is a good shout. It can even be beneficial, and it sounds counterintuitive, to actually put the release up a couple of days before, so it's live on the site on like the Wednesday night or Thursday. And okay, sure, you might then miss out on those extra 10% on a few sales, but what it means is that by the time the Friday comes around, your release is showing up in our search, in our discovery, in other fan collections, and you sort of can then take part in like the virality of Bandcamp. And I'm going to show you how that works a bit later on in the presentation, so you'll sort of see some of the places where your music can catch a bit of extra notice. And yeah, I see the point here about clashing with general releases of big apps on Bandcamp. I think we did think about, it's a good question, Consuelo, about, you know, would we want to move it to a Wednesday or something? I think just Fridays is such a good day. People are just used to buying music. I mean, personally, I liked it when we release things on Monday. Friday seems mad to me, but that's what the industry is doing. So we have kind of lent into that. But I think, you know, every artist I speak to, if they make the most out of it, they will see an uplift, regardless of if they're competing with bigger artists or not. And we certainly don't try and kind of highlight those bigger ones at the expense of the smaller ones. Okay, so a few other kind of fun facts, fun for me, facts and figures about Bandcamp. So 1 in 3 sales on the platform come from the community. What I mean by that is through our recommendation features, so whether that's our editorial, search, discovery, fan recommendations, that drives 1 in 3 sales on the site. So whereas when we started out, it was very much like a standalone website, you know, you upload your music, you tell your fans to come. Now we're trying to find more and more ways to highlight your music and make fans that don't know who you are yet become buyers, and then hopefully committed fans for the rest of your career. And I'll show you a few of the ways that you can access that community a bit later on. I mentioned fan accounts a few times. So we have 3 different types of account on Bandcamp. There's an artist account, which is very simple, selling account for a single artist. There are label accounts, which can house various artists within them, but otherwise function basically in the same way. And then there are fan accounts. So if you're a fan on Bandcamp and you buy music, you can just buy the music, download it. That's it. You don't need to interact with us anymore. But we created fan accounts so that you can have a collection of music on Bandcamp. It can then be in our app. We've got 2 apps. I'll come on to the second one later on. But the first app, the Bandcamp fan app, means that any music you've bought, you can then stream via the app, listen to the music in your collection. You can make playlists of the music you've bought again. And we've been onboarding 100,000 new fans, registered fans, every month for the last, I think, 6 years now. It's been pretty steady since then. So we are, even though, you know, we've been around a little while, we launched in 2008, we're still growing at a pretty rapid rate, certainly in terms of the number of buying users on the site. We have a 50-50 split in revenue between physical sales and digital sales. So when I say physical, I mean music merch like vinyl, CDs, tapes, but also anything that you can put a logo on: beanies, posters, hats, t-shirts, etc., etc. It's kind of interesting. So last year we turned over about $190 or so million overall in revenue that we paid out to artists and labels. And I always used to use this stat to sort of say, look, it's 50-50 between physical and digital. You really should put your merch on Bandcamp, like make sure you have your t-shirts or posters or whatever. And that is true. But actually now I feel as the years go by, it's almost more impressive that half of that revenue was digital sales. Because 10 years ago, who thought that you could sell nearly $100 million worth of downloads when streaming is so pervasive? But I do think it underlines the fact that there are fans out there who, yes, they might have a streaming account, but they also like supporting artists directly and owning that music rather than just renting it. You know, particularly people who, if you're working in electronic or dance music, for example, there's a lot of people who want to DJ with it and they want to download the WAV so that they can play it in their sets. And also just fans that like the model, like being able to support artists fairly and equitably. But, you know, maybe don't have a record player or a cassette player or et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, just important to highlight that. And yes, I mean, I'll answer your question as we go. We don't offer on demand. We used to offer a vinyl service, like a vinyl pressing service, but we had to discontinue that, unfortunately, because it just wasn't quite working out. But we are looking at more ways to do that in the future because, as you rightly pointing out, it is an attractive way of doing things and a little bit more eco-friendly too. So nothing at the moment, but watch this space. Okay, a few more. Fans choose to pay more than the asking price for an item on Bandcamp over 20% of the time. So when you set the price on Bandcamp for your items that you've got on sale, and you can check a little box that says allow fans to pay more if they want. 20% of the time, fans choose to pay extra. I think this is remarkable. These fans could listen to your music for free on YouTube. They may well have a streaming subscription as well, but they've chosen not only to pay, but to pay more than you asked for. This means that the average price paid is about 150% of the list price across the site. There was a really great story I saw recently. Someone shared this on Reddit, and it was an artist had an artist had an item up for sale, which was like $10 maybe, and the fan had paid them $100, and so they emailed the fan saying, did you make a mistake? Did you put an extra zero in? Like, I can refund you if you want. And this artist posted this exchange on Reddit. The fan replied, and pardon my language, the fan replied, no, I didn't make a mistake. Fuck off and buy yourself something sexy, which I think was a really lovely response. And again, I think just shows that what we're trying to build here is not just a way to earn money, but it's a way to build a direct link with your audience, to build direct and personal relationships with those people in your audience. And that is almost worth more than the money, because you've then got an engaged, passionate fan base that will hopefully go with you through your career. So yeah, I love that story. The second one, 70% of sales are brand new releases. So there was some research into the US streaming economy a couple of years ago. And one of the headline stats was that 70% of streams were catalog. And by catalog, I mean music that's, I think the definition is over 6 months or maybe over a year old, I think, in the kind of major label ecosystem. And we did an analysis on ours, and we found that 70% of our sales are of brand new releases, either pre-orders or less than 1 month old. The reason I bring that up is just something to factor in when you're planning a release. If you've got music coming out, Bandcamp is the place where fans are coming to buy that new stuff. It's not just returning to, you know, your same old playlist of like, this is my, you know, going for a run playlist or cooking dinner or whatever. This is people who want to find something new and exciting they've never heard before. So just keeping that in mind as you're planning release schedules, I think, can be really useful. And the last one on here, 90% of daily purchases are from repeat buyers. These are people that come to Bandcamp day in, day out. So again, it's just stressing that there is an audience that we have that maybe aren't in other places. They aren't on other platforms, and Bandcamp's just the place that they come to in the same way that they might go to a local record shop. So again, you know, by not being there, you're potentially missing out because that audience might not show up in other places. And obviously, if you do connect with them, you then have the means to connect with them again, get get their contact information and connect with them either on Bandcamp or offline too. That is one thing to note as well, is that every time someone buys something for you on Bandcamp, they're given the option to follow you, which means that they get new release notifications. You can also message them. I'll show you how the messaging system works a bit later on. But they also are asked if they want to opt into your email list as well. Those emails you can download yourself and use on your own mailing list. They're your fans, not our fans. So it's your data. And I think it's really important. We feel it's really important that artists are able to own that data themselves and be in control of accessing their audience. I think some of you probably similar to me, where you look at a platform like Twitter and think, well, I have a following there, but that's kind of useless now, or disappearing, or maybe I don't want to be in that space anymore. And that's a real challenge, I think, with these kind of platforms that we've come to rely on. So I think, Bandcamp or not, building a mailing list is a hugely important part of being a self-sufficient artist. Okay, one very small thing here, just some of the things that we've got coming up in our development pipeline. We're always trying to improve things. We're going to be working a lot on internationalizing Bandcamp. So we've already translated it into several different languages, including French, German, Spanish, Japanese, Portuguese, probably some others I can't remember, but we're working on more of that. We're working on an integration with Shopify at the moment so that you can sync stock between the two platforms if you're already using Shopify. Automated pre-order release. This is one that will be meaningful for people who have used Bandcamp before. At the moment, if you set up a pre-order and have it on pre-sale, and then on release day, you have to manually go in and click release the pre-order. And that annoys some people because they feel they have to stay up till midnight on the day of release so that it goes out at the right time. We're going to be automating that process, which is really good. We're going to be doing a lot more Bandcamp social events. So we put together get-togethers in different cities of artists and labels that are using Bandcamp, so we can talk about what we're doing, meet some of the users, get some really good feedback. We're going to be doing more of those in the coming, face-to-face, exactly. We're going to be doing more of them in the coming year. I mentioned playlists, so you can make playlists of the music that you've bought as a fan, and they're just there for you to help you organize your collection, I guess, and listen to things in the way that you want to. The next stage is going to be shareable playlists, so that you could create a playlist out of the music you love, write a little description about it. It's more like making a mixtape, really, and then you'll be able to share that with other users or on other websites. But again, the goal of this isn't just for people to stream it and listen. The goal is for people to then purchase that music and discover it and discover all the individual artists. So that's coming in the next few months. And the last thing we're doing is working on upgrading our payment system. Currently, we solely use PayPal for paying out to artists. Fans can pay via PayPal or credit card, but we're going to radically expand the number of ways that people can pay. So, enabling a lot more options for fans paying in, but also enabling direct bank transfer for artists in terms of having payouts. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have a PayPal account. So that's all stuff that's coming in the next 6 to 12 months, I guess, as well as lots of boring regulatory stuff that we have to keep along with tax and customer information and all this sort of stuff. But that's some of the stuff that we'll be working on. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the advice part. So this is split into 5 sections, and hopefully it gives you a good idea of some of the tools at your disposal. So the first one is tell your story. This is a really important thing, I think, just in general, whether you're on Bandcamp or anywhere else. I think as music fans, quite often it's not, well, I don't know, maybe you guys are different, but, I didn't get into music through kind of hearing a song and going, wow, that diminished 7th chord has changed my life. I'm really into music now. We got into it through identifying with an artist, whether it's you see Nirvana on Top of the Pops and think, I want to be that guy, or watching Dizzy Rascal or something like that. You see these things and they excite you and they get you excited about it. And then you want to find out about the artist. You want to find out their story, find out what they stand for, how they came to be, etc., etc. And there's a few different ways that you can do that on Bandcamp. So firstly is through design of your page. So in this slide, these are 9 different Bandcamp pages. But as you can see, they are radically different in how they look, or each of them is completely personalized to the artist. They've put in custom backgrounds, custom headers, change the color of the text, the backgrounds. These are all really simple to do. I mean, the background stuff's a little more complicated, but not really, you know, no more complicated than putting those things up on any other social media platform. But it really, really helps, because if fans are coming to your page, you want them to know that it's your page, not just the standard white with the blue text and whatever. So being able to personalize it is a really, really big part of telling the story of you as an artist, you know, getting your personality onto the site. You don't need a pro account to design the page. That's a basic account feature. Second is add an image of yourself. Again, this helps fans know that they're on the right artist page. I think we did a thing a few years ago and discovered that there were, I think, 20 bands called Atlas on Bandcamp. So you want people to know that they're on the right Atlas's page. So putting a photo of yourself up is really important. Secondly, adding a bio of yourself. Doesn't need to be crazy, but just having a little bit of information so that people know a little bit about you. Very easy to do, and again, part of that story. The second bit is this bit I've highlighted here. So there's a section in the edit screen of every Bandcamp release called About This Album. That's where you can tell the story of your release. We actually did some research on this, and items with that description sell 20% better than those without, which I think is pretty eye-opening, really, and just reinforces the importance of using that space to talk about your music and why you've released it, etc., etc. And actually, yeah, one last thing on that is that it does that helps our editorial team as well, and I'll come back to that a bit later on. But you know, using that space, I think my general rule of thumb is if there's a space for an image, add an image. If there's a space for some text, add some text. It's yours to do with what you will. So you know, make the most out of those options to personalize wherever you can. Okay, the second thing, sell music and more. So I talked about merch being popular on Bandcamp. Here, oh, if this clicks on, what's happening here? There we go. Right, sorry, my screen froze for a second. So these are all items that artists have sold on Bandcamp. Everything from potpourri to increasingly dead formats to t-shirts to, as one of my slightly more innocent colleagues said, a pepper grinder in the middle of the page. I'll let you guys figure that one out. But the key thing here is that you know, fans are up for buying all kinds of things on the site. And fans who are willing to pay for music at all are quite often also willing to pay a little bit extra for something personalized and unique. You know, I mentioned how well cassettes sell on Bandcamp. I don't think most of those people have a cassette player, but they just want a thing to put on their shelf in their apartment to show that they love this artist. So giving your kind of super fans, and I kind of hate that word, for us they're just fans, but giving your more committed fans the ability to give you a bit of extra money in exchange for something unique and special, I think is really worth doing. I would say that, you know, obviously vinyl is the biggest format that we sell on the site, but it is expensive to do. There are minimum numbers. It's not accessible for everyone. I'd say just having things that are super limited is a really good idea. I mean, one of you mentioned before about on demand. I think, you know, doing things like limited runs of 10s and stuff like that, I think is really important. In terms of your question here about do you have to then send a link? No, you can attach a download to any item automatically. So fans would get the download along with the physical item. There was a really great example I saw, and I really annoyed. I forgot the name of the artist, but she had an EP called something like Writing Home, or it was it was in that kind of something around that the title of the EP. And she created a set of postcards which you could buy. They were really cheap, and then she gave out a PO box address, and fans could write her a postcard, and then she would write back to them. And she created this really beautiful connection between her and her fans. Wasn't expensive to do. She did a really limited run, but it was a really effective way of earning a bit of money, but also of then doubling down on that connection between her and her fans, which I thought was really smart. This is actually an example of my favorite merch item that's ever been sold on Bandcamp. So this is a limited edition of 4. This is from a Canadian tape label called Tiger Blood Tapes. And that is a Russian burner cell phone. And I guess they just loaded up the tape on the cell phone and you plugged your headphones in and listened. I don't know if it came with a charger or if it just ran out, but it was a really cool item. We actually featured this on our Instagram, and I looked at it, I saw it and thought it was cool, so I went to have a look. They'd sold out of this, but I did then listen to the album and I bought the download because it was a good record. So, you know, again, eye-catching merch can be a way of having people discover you too. So, you know, definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, so the next thing, connect with your fans. I've talked a bit about fan accounts on Bandcamp and how important they are, and you know, being able to use the data to connect with your audience. So I mentioned also earlier our app for fans a little while ago. We launched our app for artists, which is, both apps are available for free on iOS or Android. The artist app does a bunch of different things. You can add photos to your merch items. You can look at your sales and see where your sales come from. It's a bunch of kind of quite cool stuff. The thing I want to focus on is the right-hand screen here. So this is the messaging facility. So you can actually send a message to your followers, and you can segment them by location and amount of money spent. And you can send a combination of text and photo. Obviously, when you're starting out and you don't have many followers, this isn't so useful, but as you grow, it really can become a very effective way of communicating with your fans. One thing about these messages as well, it's not like, you know, on social media where you have 10,000 followers and you post something and you look at the stats and see that like 7 people saw it. We will email the fans these messages too. So we do everything to ensure that the message that you've sent gets through and is read and consumed by the fan. And here I've got an example of a message that an artist sent that I think is a really smart usage of this setup. So this is from the artist Gold Panda. This is from sort of 3.5 years ago now. So first thing to note, it's very colloquial. It feels like a friend who's maybe moved to a new city, just like messaging someone they haven't seen for a while. It doesn't feel formal. It's clearly not written by a PR or a manager. It's written by the artists themselves. They don't have any music out at the moment. They were on a podcast, so they've shared a link to the podcast. And then the really clever thing I think here is that they were on that podcast with a few other artists, and they've shared links to those artists' music on Bandcamp. This is really clever. Why do fans follow you on Bandcamp as opposed to another platform? It's because they like buying music. So giving them an opportunity to discover and buy other music, even if you don't have any out yourself, is a really, really smart thing to do. I actually see some artists on Bandcamp Fridays just messaging their followers saying, I have a new record, I don't have anything out, I'm going to be buying these 5 things tomorrow, what are you guys picking up? And they can get into a nice kind of conversation with their fans. The bit at the bottom, again, they're just sort of saying, this is what I've been doing. I've been watching Law and Order and playing some game on the Xbox, and I bought a new NPC, and any tips. And then actually in the comments, fans were like saying, I'll make sure you switch this setting off and try and upgrade the hardware in this way, and blah, blah, blah. So again, you know, they had no music out, but they connected with their fans in a meaningful way. They understood why the fans were on that platform in the first place and gave them something that lent into that that type of fan. It's a really smart thing to do, and just, yeah, something to kind of keep in mind when you're using the messaging. The messaging is available on the app, as I said. It's also available on desktop. You go to the community tab when you're logged in, you'll see this ability to send those messages. Okay, another kind of feature that we developed recently that really helps connect with fans is listening parties. So in COVID, the second thing that we made after Bandcamp Fridays was Bandcamp Live, which is where you could live stream from your page to your audience. We still have live, that's still available, but I think as kind of regular shows, turning my heater off, so my foot was starting to burn slightly. As kind of regular shows came back, obviously the need to live stream has lessened. But we did see that people would do things of having like a kind of group listening party for a record. So we created an automated version of that. So all you need to do is set a time and date for your stream to start. Obviously, normally ahead of release date, although you can do it afterwards. At that time allotted, we will start a stream of your music based on the audio that you've uploaded. You don't have to be on camera. There's just a chat room there. People can buy the album and any merch associated with it just within the streaming window. And they are really lovely, wholesome events. I've hosted a bunch of these for artists on my label. And, you know, we did 1 or 2 that had 400 or 500 people there, which was amazing. And we had one for an artist, and it was actually her first she's been in a band, but it was her debut solo EP. And we did the listening party, and there was about 25 people there, and I was a little worried. I thought, oh, is she going to feel a little bit disappointed that there's not so many people there? But anyway, it was great. We did the thing, and then afterwards, I was sort of chatting to her on WhatsApp, and I was like, oh, what did you think? And she's like, you know what? I was really nervous about releasing the EP on Friday, but everyone was so lovely and so complimentary. I don't feel scared at all, and I'm looking forward to Friday now, which was just, I was really happy that she had that great experience. But I do think that's part of it. It's like it's a nice way to celebrate that you've created something and finished it and got it out, because that's no mean feat. But I also think it's a really good opportunity if you do have a following on social media. It's a really good way of getting people from social media onto Bandcamp for something that's free, but they're now in a space where at some point they're expected to pay for something. And again, that path of taking a casual listener and turning them into a committed fan, I think this is a really interesting access point for that. And well worth doing. And if you haven't been to a listening party, we actually have a calendar on the front page at bandcamp.com. Go check one out. They're really fun. And, you kind of, sometimes I'll go and check some out sometimes, and you can see people in the chat who know each other, but maybe don't see each other very often, kind of like using it like it's MSN Messenger or something from back in the day. It's really lovely. So yeah, definitely worth looking at. Okay, so I talked about the Bandcamp community, and not just me with MSN Messenger. Good. Okay. And kind of the ways in which we use that community to drive sales. 1 in 3 sales comes through the community. So I'm going to show you I'm going to show you a few ways that you can access that and how that works on the site. And this is something to kind of bear in mind for Bandcamp Fridays a bit too. I know I talked about releasing something a bit early, and then it starts appearing in these different places. So it all starts with that follow button that's got the massive blue arrow pointing at it. Once a fan is following you, what happens? So you release a new record, and they'll get an email direct to their inbox, very direct marketing, just saying, here's a new record from that artist that you like. You can actually personalize the text in that as well. So you can actually put a little, I say personalize, not to each individual fan, but you can put your own message in there, like my new record's out, I'm announcing my new record, blah, blah, blah. If the fan clicks on that, this is what they go to. So this is a release page on Bandcamp. Now, I actually created a pre-order. I'd always recommend setting up digital pre-orders on Bandcamp. The way that works is that you have it on sale, a few weeks or months ahead of schedule when it's going to release, depending on how you're promoting it. And you can select 1 or more tracks to be available for instant download during that pre-order phase. It's vitally important that you make at least 1 track streamable. You can see here, there's that play button on the left-hand side of the screen. If you don't have a track that's streamable, there is no play button. So people come to your page and they can't listen to anything, which means they're less likely to buy it. Actually, that play button, having that track available, without it, you won't appear in search, discovery, you won't be eligible for editorial. So if you need to wait until you're ready to share a track before putting your EP or album on pre-order, please do it. I'd really recommend that you have one of those tracks available to listen, because it really opens up all of this stuff that I'm going to show you now. With singles, it's difficult. If it's just a single track, you just got to kind of put it out, unfortunately, because you could create a 1-track album and have it on pre-order, but then there's sort of no point. I think, Bandcamp definitely is sort of geared to albums and EPs more than singles. The other thing you'll notice on this page is that there is a vinyl version there. So I've got some physical products available as well as digital. So there's options for those kind of more, those fans with deeper pockets to be able to give me a bit of extra money. There's actually, I've realized, and this is actually an artist on my label here, there is one error on this page. I don't know, extra points if anyone can spot the missed opportunity of something I've said already. And I only noticed this. I've been doing a variation of this presentation for many years, and there you go, Fran, well done. No bio. I've completely failed to add a bio of my artists here. So Fran gets the extra Bandcamp points if such a thing exists. But yeah, apart from that, the page is good. It's well designed. It's personalized, and it's got a few different options for people to buy things and listen to music. So once people then start buying it, it then starts appearing in other fan accounts. Now, if you have a fan account on Bandcamp, once a week, you'll get an email from us saying, here's what fans you follow have been buying. One thing to note about all of the discovery and recommendation on Bandcamp, none of it is AI driven. It is all driven by human decisions. Decisions of our editorial team to feature something, decisions of fans not to just say, I like this, but to like it enough to pay money for it, which I think is, in this day and age, the kind of highest recommendation you can get. So you'll get these emails. And again, it's just fans that you followed, not fans that we think you might like. But fans that that you've chosen to follow, and if someone then buys something off your recommendation, you'll get an email saying, "Hey, give yourselves a high five. You helped share this amazing music with this fan." So there's a kind of virtuous circle that goes on within that, which I think is quite cool. Once then it starts, more fans find it, more fans buy it. It will then start appearing in our discovery platform. This is sort of the closest we have to like a chart, I guess. But if you go to bandcamp.com/discover, you can search by genre, subgenre, format, location. So if you want to find, t-shirts from techno artists in Berlin, you can find that. Spoiler alert, I think that would just be a plain black t-shirt, but it's possible to kind of do that searching if you really want to. I would also say at this point, this is a good reminder of the importance of tagging your music correctly. A lot of people, particularly on Bandcamp Fridays, will use this Discover module just to go and find weird music that they've never discovered before. They want to find something new, they want to buy something, they want to support an artist. We had a thing a few years ago of a bunch of metal artists that tagged their music as children's music, which is quite funny in fairness. But it meant that no one could find their music, and people who were actually looking for children's music had a bunch of albums with Satan in the title, which I have slightly bigger children now, but when they were small, maybe that wouldn't be so bad to have have something like that to listen to. I don't know, but yeah, really important. It's boring, but tagging your music is really key. You can put 5 tags at the artist level, which will then automatically be associated with all your releases. And then you can add more at the individual release and even track level. So if you're a hip hop artist, but you have a techno remix, you can tag that specific track as well, just to give it more chance of people finding it. Right. Oh, yeah. And then, so, I've sort of shown you all the ways that we try and surface your music with people that would be into it, but it's also up to you to try and bring some of them in too. If you use a smart link service like Linkfire or Future FM, put Bandcamp in there. It really helps. Sometimes it gets forgotten. We actually have an integration now with Linkfire, so it would automatically bring up Bandcamp as an option, and we're working on similar ones with some of the other platforms as well. But if you have to add it manually, please remember to do so, because it really does help to drive traffic in the first instance. Okay, so I've kind of gone through a lot of this stuff fairly quickly. It is actually also available on our artist guide, which is bandcamp.com/guides, GUIDE. And oh yeah, there was a little video there, but is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. I screen recorded my phone of like scrolling up through the guide. But anyway, you can actually take a photo of that or access that QR code, and that will take you to the guide. I always check this. I'm always kind of worried that I'm going to like send people to Spotify or something if this will somehow stop working, but no, still working. Good, excellent. I definitely recommend if you've got a release coming up, it's really worth just sitting down for an afternoon with a big pot of coffee and just working through the guide and going through some of the tips and just making sure that you've not left anything to chance. So definitely something I'd recommend doing at your own leisure. And there was a question about the Bandcamp Daily and pitching. That is what I'm coming to right now. So the Bandcamp Daily is our editorial platform that we launched in 2016. We have 3 editors in Brooklyn, New York, and around 100 or so freelance writers all over the world, and their job is to write about the breadth of amazing music on Bandcamp. So there's a bunch of different ways that we do this. I would say that, and again, this is not just for Bandcamp. If you're pitching for anywhere, use the platform yourself. go check out the coverage, see what kind of things get written about, familiarize yourself with writers who are writing about this similar style of music to what you do. A pitch that is targeted and shows that you've taken the time to get to know the person or the platform that you're pitching to will always do better than, you know, just a blind pitch. I mean, with my label, we put out kind of soul, hip hop, jazz, that kind of stuff. The number of emails I get, like, we're a 4-piece rock band from Nottingham, we'd love to be on your label. It's like, well, would you? I don't think it's going to work out for either of us, you know. So I think definitely having done your research really helps. To give you a little flavor of the kind of things or the kind of coverage that we have, I've got a few examples here. Firstly, album of the day. We do one of these a day. This is the closest that we get to just a straightforward album review on Bandcamp. 500-600 words about a record. This gets quite prominent position on the front page, and it also appears in the fan app as well. So it's a really good feature to get. And that doesn't, you know, there's not normally any kind of interview or anything with that. It's just like a review effectively. But we only write about stuff we like. So all of them are positive. There's no kind of harsh criticism going on here. We also have features. So these are features about specific artists, Kim Deal, or think about country musicians in Nashville. Generally, you know, this is sort of what you'd see in a lot of platforms, right? You know, the big feature with a picture of you, nice big interview. We sometimes do some photography stuff with that. More often than not, we just use existing stuff. But, you know, we'll commission a writer. They'll speak to you. They'll write up your story, write up about the record. And that's it. And, you know, I think for most platforms, that's probably the most attractive thing, right? You want that big kind of solo piece about you. But actually on Bandcamp, sometimes it's the other types of features that can be more effective. So we do a lot of pieces that feature multiple artists. So things like these scene reports, about Glasgow's DIY Spirit, Sound of Guadeloupe and Martinique. We've done articles about Siberian punk, about female electronic musicians in South America. Like, nothing is too niche for us. We really love to cover things that aren't being covered elsewhere and that are kind of weird and wonderful and undiscovered. So if you are part of a scene that you think is like an interesting, cool thing, there's a bunch of it on Bandcamp, tell us about it, because we might be willing to write a piece about it. We also do our monthly genre columns, which cover, I mean, at least, I think it's maybe 10, maybe even 15 different genres that we cover, from ambient electronic, metal, jazz, hip hop, soul, experimental, etc., etc., etc. Now, the reason why being in some of these multi-artist pieces is more valuable than being in a solo piece is that when we feature an artist on Bandcamp in the daily, we will notify all of their followers that we've written a piece about them. So if you're in a piece just about you, we notify your followers. If you're in a piece with 10 other artists, we notify all of their followers. So actually, if you're an emerging artist, pitching for one of the multi-artist pieces can actually be more beneficial than going for a solo piece. You also got more chance of being covered, right? Because you know, it's not just about one person, they're covering many different artists. So that's just a little tip about kind of how you pitch in. How to pitch. So Bandcamp links only, please don't send us SoundCloud, Spotify, Dropbox links with, like, you know, 3 gig of WAVs to download. We're not going to download it. We need to know the music is on Bandcamp to start with, because we only cover things that's on Bandcamp, obviously. It doesn't have to be on sale. It can be a draft or a private release. Just copy and paste the URL. All of us have admin access, so we can see things even if they're not publicly on sale yet. Make sure that in that page you've written about your release as well. You put that information about the story of the record and it's on the page. We work very far ahead. So again, most of our coverage is around albums. We don't do much coverage of single tracks just because there's less to write about, as much as anything. We like to have features going up as close to street date as possible, just because it gives maximum impact for you and for us. 8 to 9 weeks lead time minimum. The longer we know in advance we know about something, the more likely we are to be able to cover it. Our editors currently get over 2,500 pitches a week. We post 4 pieces a day. It's really hard. There's a lot of music to cover, and we can't cover all of it. So with the URL, I mean, literally, it has to be on Bandcamp. I want a blah 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 .bandcamp.com. That's what we need. Yeah. At least one streamable track when you put it on sale, because as I said before, you need that to be discoverable, and all of our pieces have embedded players so that people can listen to the music while they're reading about it. So that's really important too. Yeah, that's fine. If it's private, that's okay. We all have admin access, so you can just send us the link. We can find it. We love stories. I'll give you a minor anecdote about this. So there was an artist on my label, and he put out beat tape, like a hip hop beat tape. And I'd been talking to our editorial team. They're like, we need good stories. We need to know about things and blah. And when we say stories, I think, I don't know, quite often in the industry, story is like, I got played on Radio 1 and I was in this feature. That's not a story. That's just like industry stuff. We mean like why, who, what inspired you, etc., etc. Anyway, so the editorial team would kind of stressed how they want stuff that's like, you know, great to listen to, but good to write about, good to read about. So I was talking to my artist who we've got this record coming up, and I was like, right, what's the story? And he was like, well, I don't know, I just made some beats. Nothing really. And I was like, no, but there's got to be an angle or something. I was like, why? You called it Shaboo. Why is it called Shaboo? And he's like, oh, that's my uncle. He was a Bollywood actor. He's kind of not very successful, but he actually, you know, he was funny enough, actually. Yeah, thinking about it, he was the one that inspired me to do creative things, because no one else in my family would do that. And he kind of, you know, he was actually quite a big inspiration for me. And actually thinking about it, all of the like skits on the album are actually from a tape that another uncle gave me of this Indian radio station that we would only get when we got into London. We drive in from Wales into London to see family, and there would just be like white noise on the radio while we were waiting for this station to come in, and I'd be listening to Cypress Hill on my headphones in the back. And then I've used all the adverts from this radio station as the skits on the album. So then I was like, okay, well, we have a story. And we put that together into a nice kind of package. We pitched it to editorial, and that was the first release that was on my label that got covered by the team, because they loved the story and it was great to write about. So what I would say is, if you don't think you have a story, you probably do. You just need to find the right person to ask the right questions to bring that out of you. And I do think, again, it's that, going back to what I was saying before, that's what excites people. You know, there's so much great music out there, but if you've got that angle and something that's unique about you, which you will, because everybody is unique, obviously, it's really worth kind of highlighting that. And we love to feature that too. It's an important thing for us. Pitch to us directly. That is my email. Oh, I put my colleague Dennis's email. Ignore that. You can just send things to me. I'm ali@bandcamp.com. I don't decide what gets covered in editorial, but if you send me your stuff, keeping in mind all of these criteria, I can guarantee that your music will get listened to by the team and it will be given a fair shake. But yeah, you know, getting stuff in early is really, really important part of that. As well as the written editorial, we have 3 radio shows too. We have the Bandcamp Weekly, which goes up every Tuesday, which covers soul, jazz, electronic music, kind of black music, broadly speaking, I guess. We also have specialist metal and hip hop shows, which go up on alternate Fridays. Similar sort of, or same process for pitching. But again, you know, they're all on our front page. Go have a listen, check it out. And again, if you want, you know, that's something, there's a few questions I can see about, you know, individual tracks. Obviously the radio shows, we can play individual tracks because it's, you know, we're not writing something, we're just playing it. So again, you know, have a listen and see if what you do covers it. We hope to be able to expand the number of radio shows we do, because we're really covering such a small proportion of the music on the site. But it's quite a kind of, we want to pay our contributors and stuff, and it can get quite expensive. So it's something we're just trying to figure out ways of being able to do it in a cost-effective way. So hopefully we'll be able to add to that in the months and years to come. So to sum up, the 5 tips: make it personal, personalize your page, add those photos, write those bits and pieces in where there's space. Sell music, sell digital, still really important, but if you've got some merch to add, really do that too. And use our tools to connect with your fans, whether that's the messaging or listening parties, or downloading your mailing list and talking to them directly through your mailing list provider. Using those little tips to you know, tag your music correctly, make sure it's getting into fans' collections, make sure you've got a streaming track so that it can start appearing in search and discovery and fan accounts and all of that, and pitch your music to the Bandcamp daily, giving us plenty of time and focusing really on the story of your music as much as the sound of it as well. So that's a lot of information. I would recommend checking out that guide. I'm going to put a couple of links into the chat as well for you. Let me find these. Okay, so no. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so here is where we go. Right, this is a little thing about listening parties. There, and this is the artist guide. If I can type, my goodness, there we go. And I'm also just going to throw in as well, our help guides are really, really good. So if there's something you're not sure about, go check out the help doc. It's really they're very sort of all-encompassing, and most answers to questions are in there. Just seeing a few of the questions here. There's one here about what are the best ways to attract new followers. That's a really good question. I think one thing that I've seen people do, and particularly on Bandcamp Fridays, is, you know, you might be working towards an EP or an album that's kind of your big piece of work that you're working on. Bandcamp Fridays are a really good day to put up remixes, live versions, alternate mixes, stuff like that, and even put them up as name your price with free as the minimum. And what you can actually do is, if you say it's name your price 0 minimum, but people enter 0, they have to give you their email address. It's a really good way of building a mailing list, but also you know, getting people to have their eyes on your page ahead of an actual release coming up. So I think things like that can be very very useful. I can't see all of the other questions, but if there's any other questions now, let me stop sharing my screen actually. There we go. But yeah, if anyone had other questions now, please speak up and hopefully I can answer them.
Okay, I think we're good. Is there any questions? No? Well, you did good. Oh, there is one.
Yeah, sorry. What you were saying a minute ago about basically coming up with interesting stories that are linked to why you chose to go down that particular path of music or style. You were saying something about how it's important to speak to someone who can bring out those questions, because everybody's got an interesting story. Are there any particular questions that you recommend we ask ourselves?
Sure.
To figure out what angle to go at.
Well, that's a great question. so yeah, I would say I would say, like, you know, why did you make it? What inspired you? What influenced you? And influences aren't just musical ones; they're like personal ones, right? You know, what was it that that made you want to express yourself in this way? You know, what are you? If you're a vocalist, like, what are you writing about? You know, what are you talking about? What themes do you want to discuss with people or to vocalize? So I think that kind of stuff. But I think, you know, like, I think a good thing to do is actually look at artists that inspire you and that you were kind of influenced by, and like look in their stuff. Like, you don't even need to look it up really. You can just think about it, like, well, what was it that I really liked about them? What was it about their identity? And the story is like, and you know, sometimes like you've just made a great piece of music and there's nothing to it. That's it. That's fine. Also, you know, I think, you know, with the album of the day, it is much more like we're just reviewing the music rather than kind of talking about the other stuff. But I think, yeah, like, you know, looking at, I think there's two things, right? There's you as an artist as a whole, but then there's also this specific release, and like, why have you chosen to put this collection of songs together in this way? You know, did you have something in the back of your mind throughout, or, you know, whatever it might be? Yeah, I think it's quite like, I think radio and also all kind of other places like this stuff too, because I mean, you know, we've had it with our label where we've had a single track come out and we've had, you know, 6 Music or whoever wanted to play stuff, but they're like, what's next? What's coming next? What's is there an album, because they want to kind of know they can get behind something, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say that's the thing. And you know, asking friends, I mean, I do think sometimes our friends know us better than we know ourselves with stuff like that, and are better at kind of, you know, enunciating it or vocalizing it, I guess. So yeah, and again, also a good, if you're able to afford a press or PR agent, a good PR agent will extract that from you. Like they'll yeah, because that's what they need to sell it to, right? So yeah, cool.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. And there's one here about we're about to drop an album. Should we go for Bandcamp rather than Spotify, or both? You should do both. Absolutely. If you're an emerging artist, particularly, no one can afford to not be in a place where people might discover their music. Put your music everywhere. But I would say that you know, if you're directing people to somewhere, you're better off directing them to Bandcamp, where you can earn some money and find out who they are and be able to communicate with them, rather than sending them, you know, if they're on Spotify, they'll go there anyway, right? Like if that's their chosen place to find music, they don't need your help to find it. But if, you know, I think also if you're a DIY artist, it actually is, fans respond when you give them the truth and say, this is really hard, and it's really hard to make money. And if you're able to come and, you know, spare £5 to buy my EP or whatever, that actually really helps me, you know. If you can't, sure, go stream it or share it, but if you can afford to pay some money, that would be really great. And I think, you know, fans get that now. I don't think we need to have this kind of veneer of like everything's amazing and we're all doing brilliantly. Like it's, I don't think that that's needed anymore. So yeah, you know, you can be honest about that stuff. There's another question here. What's a common mistake artists make? It's a really good question. I don't know. I think on Bandcamp, like not using all the stuff that's there, it's sort of, you know, I get people saying, oh, I'm really not doing anything on Bandcamp. And I go to their page and it's just like, there's a song up and nothing, like no information, no picture, no nothing. I'm like, well, this isn't very compelling. You know, there are tools that you can give. I think one thing, and this applies to Bandcamp and it applies to others, my friend Darren, who's a music marketing guy. In fact, you should check out, he did a talk for Music Ally recently about kind of, I can't remember what it's titled. It's something to do with fandom, like how you reach fans. They've put it up on YouTube. If you search Darren Hemming Music Ally, you'll find it. It's a really good, like 15-minute thing about how you connect with audiences. But he has a sort of saying, which is read the manual. Every platform and website has a user guide, and none of us ever read any of them. So Bandcamp has the Bandcamp guide. It has the help docs. Spotify has umpteen different kind of guides for artists. Yeah, that's right. Darren Hemming, Music Ally, correct, in the chat. So like, you know, taking the time to actually read these things, I think it's really important. Yeah, definitely something I see people not do, I guess.
All
okay.
Right. I'm just gonna, yeah, I think we're good on, time is up. Thank you so much, Ali. I think it was amazing. I feel, I think the thing to take out of this is that Bandcamp is community based, and it's all about, like, it's an exchange. It's not just coming up and say, you need to follow me and that's it. And I think, I mean, it's like Amplifier, we're the same. We're all like support each other, help each other. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone for joining us. It was amazing. We had lots of info. If you have any question, do get in touch with Ali. I'm sure he'll get back to you.
Absolutely, yeah. That's my job. Happy to help. Always.
Yeah. And for all the events coming up, tomorrow we have our roundtable talk, which is for members only, but this is where we discuss what's happening in our career and how we can help each other. We have coffee morning in Brighton on the 21st of Feb, and on the 28th, our coffee morning in London. So join us, come and meet us if you've never met us. To everybody else that knows us, see you soon. And again, thank you, Ali. Thank you, Bandcamp, for all this knowledge, and see you soon.